When 20,000 people discovered the amazing reason my parents refused to babysit my nephew. Sarah felt the weight of exhaustion cling to her like a heavy blanket, wrapping her tighter with every passing hour. A single mother navigating the relentless demands of her nursing job in a small Midwestern town, she returned home each night to a room scattered with the vivid remnants of Jamie's vivid imagination, the plush toys, crayons, and half-finished craft projects, all whispering the stories of a child who had boundless energy and an endless need for love. The joy of motherhood now felt like a distant memory, drowned out by the chaos, deadlines, and an all-consuming weariness that shadowed her every move. She would find herself staring out the window during her break, watching the stars emerge in the night sky, wrestling with a whirlwind of emotions that left her with an uncomfortable choice: to claim that maternal joy or let the weight of her burdens choke that flicker of light. Part of her longed for her parents' involvement. Where were they when she needed a break? When did their love turn into a distant drip of obligatory check-ins and empty promises? As the hours dragged on, the revelation struck her hard. Her parents had chosen to invest their time in a scholarship program for local teens, pouring both their savings and commitment into a future she felt they should prioritize her son. How could they turn their backs on their own blood for strangers? Waves of betrayal washed over her, anger isolating her as the clock ticked on, echoing her alarm. She felt pride rise within, that they were striving to make a difference, but disappointment quickly overran that glimmer. Family should come first, right? With frustration burning within, Sarah would bind that anguish into 280 characters and post it online. Before she knew it, her outburst transformed into a tempest, a blur of likes and shares. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The likes snowballed, and thousands rushed to share their stories of sacrifice, all resonating with her plight, a chorus of voices. However, within each supportive comment, shadows of guilt leapt into her mind. Had she truly turned against her own parents, laying their choices bare for judgment? The tension thickened like the smell of freshly baked cinnamon rolls wafting through her parents' diner. She replayed their expressions, the warmth and pride they took in serving their community. How could she stand proud in her indignation when, under that very pride, was likely a truth yet unknown to her? As Sarah prepared to confront them, anticipation twisted in her gut. Would she find answers or only deeper wounds? Walking through those familiar doors, she felt the nostalgia pinning her feet to the checkered floor. Love, guilt, anger, a torturous mix. Would she be ready to face them, ready for the revelations that awaited? Just the thought of leaving with nothing resolved left her trembling. What could her mother possibly tell her that might shift this chaotic narrative spiraling out of control? The air thickened as she stepped forward, each beat of her heart echoing the dread that she dared not speak. The moment Sarah crossed the threshold of her parents' diner, the familiar buzz of kitchen appliances and the mingling scents of coffee and pastries enveloped her like a warm embrace. Yet, instead of comfort, those elements intensified her turmoil. This was more than just a family confrontation, it was a clash of unspoken expectations and buried resentments. Her parents stood behind the counter, wrapped in their routines. Her mother, apron-clad, kneaded dough with rhythmic precision, while her father arranged pastries in their display case. They glanced up, their smiles faltering as they read her expression. Their joy in serving the community felt incompatible with the storm brewing within their daughter. "Sarah, is everything all right?" her mother asked, a delicate concern lacing her voice. "Do you have a minute?" The urgency in her tone sliced through the ambient chatter. "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" Her father's gaze shifted from the muffins to her, worry tightening the lines on his face. As they settled into a corner booth, the tension thickened, and Sarah wrestled silently with the words nesting in her throat. Part of her wanted to unleash her hurt, to express the depths of her disappointment. But the other part hesitated, aware that this wasn't just about her. I saw your posts. Her mother's voice was steady, probing. What prompted that? Internally, Sarah grappled with the temptation to launch into her grievances. It was easier to blame them for their choices, to paint her narrative with brushes dipped in betrayal. Yet something else lingered, a need for understanding, a desire to hear their side. It's hard for me, she began, her voice trembling slightly. It feels like you've chosen something over family. Jamie needs you, and it feels like I'm doing this alone. Her mother's expression softened, and she nodded in recognition of Sarah's pain. We've been thinking a lot about that. What do you mean? Her father leaned in, as if sharing a secret that had been hidden too long. We started the scholarship program because we wanted to give back, to help kids like you were once. But we also thought about Jamie, about the values we'd like to pass on. The admission struck Sarah. Was their absence not a selfish act, but an attempt to create a ripple effect that could inspire the next generation? But why not just help us directly? Her voice cracked with emotion. We need you here. Jamie needs you. We didn't realize it would take such a toll on you, her mother replied, the weight of her words evident. Our focus shifted, but it was never our intention to abandon you. The revelations poured out like the coffee her mother had brewed, warm, yet riveting. Sarah pondered their intentions. The unintentional neglect was more a reflection of their good hearts than outright disregard. I feel like I'm fighting every day. It's exhausting. Sarah's frustration boiled over. I'm afraid I'm failing as a mother. Listen, her father said, his voice firm yet gentle. We believe in you. You're stronger than you know. This isn't about failure, it's about learning to lean on the people who love you. As she absorbed their sincerity, a flicker of clarity ignited within her. Perhaps this wasn't merely a confrontation with her parents, but an awakening in herself. She could redefine her narrative not just as someone struggling under the weight of their absence, but as a mother ready to assert her needs and build a support system. With newfound determination, Sarah took a breath. I need us to communicate. I want to be part of this program, too, but it has to include Jamie. A profound silence enveloped them, heavy with possibilities and unspoken dreams. Whatever lay ahead required planning and vulnerability, something she had yet to fully embrace. How could she transform that into empowerment? The questions loomed, leaving her pulsating with both anxiety and anticipation. Could she forge a path that included her parents' passions while prioritizing her responsibilities as a mother? As they locked eyes, Sarah realized it was only the first step in a much larger journey. It wasn't merely about resolving these wounds, it was about forging a new alliance. Tomorrow, she would make a plan that transformed this moment into action. And perhaps, just perhaps, by intertwining their dreams and her own, she could find the balance she was so desperately seeking. But the shadows of doubt lingered. What if old patterns threatened their newly forged alliance? The realization hung in the air as she contemplated her next move, a decision poised on the verge of transformation. The morning sun poured warmth through the window, illuminating the remnants of the previous day's emotional upheaval. Sarah sat at the dining table, a pile of empty notebooks strewn before her, each one waiting for her thoughts to flow onto its blank pages. Today was the day she had resolved to create a plan not just for herself but for her family. She picked up a pen, tapping it against her teeth as she tried to gather her ideas. The clamor of the diner below reminded her of the comfort of routine but also of the chaos that had unfolded the day before. Her parents were trying to build something meaningful while she felt increasingly isolated, struggling to articulate her needs. It was that realization that propelled her forward. She was no longer just a daughter caught in family turbulence but a mother who needed to advocate for her child. The first line she penned read, "Mutual commitments." It jolted her with a sense of purpose, emphasizing that communication needed to be a two-way street. Her parents were willing to help, they just needed to understand her definition of help. Jamie is part of this, she scribbled furiously. Involving him should be our priority. The thought of Jamie navigating the world without the guidance of his grandparents weighed heavily on her. Deep down, she feared that if she let this opportunity slip, it might render her efforts futile. After all, how could she contribute positively to the scholarship program if Jamie felt neglected? There was solace in tangible planning, and as Sarah began mapping her thoughts, she noticed patterns emerging. The threads of her parents' dreams interlaced with her aspirations as a mother, reinforcing her resolve to find common ground. What if their combined efforts could generate a supportive structure for Jamie? The more she pondered, the more exhilarating the possibilities became. But her idealism was met with a harsh wave of doubt. Would her parents truly embrace this new dynamic? They had spent years focused on their initiative, and even if their intentions were noble, change could be met with resistance. That thought catapulted her into deep reflection. Could she articulate her fear of failure without sounding accusatory? She needed to be strong and firm. The last thing she wanted was to return to the powerless feeling she'd harbored for too long. Gritting her teeth, she wrote, "I deserve to be heard. Our family needs transparency." As the morning drifted into afternoon, Sarah sharpened her focus. With each sentence she penned, she imagined the conversations that lay ahead. She visualized an invitation for her parents, treating it like a proposal dear to her heart. Their community service could expand to include Jamie, encouraging values born from family togetherness, answering questions she hadn't thought to ask before. Foster connection through shared experiences. The phrase glimmered like a beacon. With this insight, Sarah felt an inkling of empowerment. What was once just confrontation transformed into a collaborative vision for a future she wanted for Jamie, a future grounded in both family and community service. As she laid her pen down, a surge of exhilaration coursed through her veins. For the first time in ages, she felt an imminent shift was on the horizon, not just for her but for her parents too. This was more than a fight, this was a family working toward harmonizing their disparate dreams. But as she caught her breath, anxiety crept back like the tide, raising questions she struggled to ignore. What if her parents dismissed her proposal? What if they struggled to adjust to this new dynamic where their projects intimately intersected with family life? With those nagging thoughts echoing in her mind, she stood with a fire ignited within her. Today was just the start. Tomorrow's conversation would determine whether this blueprint would come to fruition or falter, and the stakes felt more intense than ever. Knowing she was bound for a reckoning lit a spark deep inside her. As she prepared to leave, she resolved to step forward, ready to face her fears head on. The time had come not just to present her plan but to reconcile her place within it, bringing Jamie into the fold with her parents. There was nothing left to do but hope that both sides would embrace this new journey together, but doubt still lingered. Would their plans mesh well enough to reshape their family dynamics, or would Sarah find herself battling old patterns that refused to fade? The hours leading up to the critical conversation brimmed with tension. As afternoon faded, Sarah paced in her small living room, glancing at the clock every few minutes. Each tick seemed to echo her racing thoughts. How could she effectively communicate her plan without triggering defensiveness? Techniques she'd learned in parenting classes flooded her mind. Stay calm, use I statements, she muttered under her breath, rehearsing the script in her head. She needed to express her feelings without assigning blame. The stakes had never felt higher. This meeting could determine the trajectory for her family and Jamie. When her parents arrived, Sarah felt her heart pound in her chest. They entered with warm smiles, but their faces displayed an anticipation that mirrored her own anxiety. After brief pleasantries, tension draped the room like a heavy curtain. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady yet tremulous. "I want to share a vision I have for our family." She gestured for them to sit, pushing her chaotic thoughts aside. Her father nodded, his expression attentive, while her mother narrowed her eyes, a visible sign of concern. Had they sensed her tumultuous emotions? Sarah thought about Jamie, steeling her resolve. "I believe involving Jamie in what you do could strengthen our family. It can create a bond that fosters both his growth and yours." Her words flowed easier now. The concern she harbored about articulating her fears began to dissipate with every sentence. Her father shifted in his seat, the creaking of the chair amplifying the silence. "We're open to ideas, Sarah, but it's important for us to maintain our focus on the project. We've sacrificed a lot for this vision. It's how we feel we contribute. Can this really work? Fear twisted in her stomach. What we need to talk about is the commitment you have towards Jamie. He needs your guidance now more than ever. The conviction in her voice surprised even herself. Her mother leaned forward, eyes flashing with a mix of hope and concern. We've committed ourselves to helping others in the community, dear. How can we balance this with the familial responsibilities? This was the point where she could crumble or draw strength from her newfound resolve. Mutual commitments, she reiterated from her notes. If you can work together with me on this, we can create something beautiful. It doesn't have to be separate. In fact, involving Jamie in your initiatives could enhance your influence and impact. The moment hung heavy, filled with unspoken words. Her mother's gaze softened slightly. They had a history of applauding ambition but had never fully grasped how ambition could be redefined through the lens of family. It sounds like you put a lot of thought into this, her father finally said, his tone shifting. But what assurances do we have that this won't just be another distraction? We're used to doing things in a certain way. I understand, she replied, words bubbling with urgency. But it might also be the answer we've been seeking to keep our family grounded as we expand those horizons. I don't want you to lose the essence of family while chasing larger dreams. Let's redefine our commitment together. Take a moment to think about it. It can be transformational. Her heart raced as silence enveloped the room. Was she pushing too hard? Or had she, for once, struck a chord deep within them? In that tension-filled moment, everything felt precarious, their collective future hanging in the balance. Doubt surged again. Could she persuade them to share this vision? Then, her mother's voice broke the silence, once again filled with that anxiously hopeful timbre she had come to know. What do you propose as a starting point? A flicker of exhilaration ignited within her. This was the opening she yearned for. This was her chance to shape not just Jamie's experience but her own evolution as a mother. In that pivoting instant of catharsis, Sarah contemplated her next words carefully, poised to redefine the family, tethering their dreams in synergy. Would they embrace the unfamiliar territory she was charting, or retract to the comfort of their old ways? The impending answer felt electric, like a live wire sparking with uncertainty. Would this be the dawn of a new family chapter? The fabric of anticipation clung tightly to the atmosphere, each breath becoming a monument to her hope. Sarah felt a shift in her parents' demeanor, a blend of curiosity and hesitation. Their focus sharpened, signaling a pivotal moment in the emotional negotiation she was orchestrating. Let us think about this practically, she said, deciding to emphasize practicality over mere emotion. What if we outlined the schedule? We can weave Jamie's involvement into your current projects, rather than viewing it as an added commitment. Her voice resonated with a newfound authority as she articulated the possibilities. She could visualize evenings spent working as a team, Jamie contributing ideas, and her parents nurturing his development while still pursuing their ambitions. The imagery in her mind painted a vibrant picture of synergy. That sounds different, her mother conceded, but her tone remained cautious, still veiled with that lingering concern. How would we even begin? Understanding the tentative progress they had made, Sarah suggested, what if we initiate a project together? Something small, like a family garden or a home improvement task? Jamie can help, and it'll allow you to spend time with him while focusing on a shared goal. The more meaningful involvement from your side will give him a sense of contribution and belonging. Her father's brow furrowed, skepticism lingered in his expression. A garden? Is that really substantial enough? We have bigger aspirations. You underestimate how impactful that could be, Sarah urged, anxiety thrumming beneath her calm exterior. Mom, I still remember how the vegetable patch you tended brought our whole family together every summer. We can't lose that nurturing side in the midst of ambitious goals. The memories flashed like vibrant photographs, revealing the unbreakable bond of shared labor and laughter. She could feel the grounding nature of that time slipping away. It wasn't just about Jamie anymore, it was about reconnecting. I suppose it's worth trying out, her father said finally, the warmth in his voice signaling a slight thaw. But just as she felt the weight lift from her chest, a single question hovered ominously on her mind: what if their initial experiment failed, and the dissension that had haunted past conversations returned? Would the fragile progress made today shift back into a battleground? For a fleeting moment, unease gnawed at her, threatening to erase the victory she had begun to taste. "Okay then, let us focus on planning," her mother interjected, taking control of the discussion. "We'll need to get proper supplies, and Jamie's involvement must be executing tasks suited to his age. But before we finalize anything, Sarah," her mother's tone turned serious, "this type of collaboration will require us to re-evaluate the balance we maintain in our lives." "I'm ready for that," Sarah replied, determination settling firmly in her spirit. The notion of rebalancing felt liberating, like stepping into a realm of possibilities. The family unit can redefine its narrative through reciprocity. "I'll support the logistics to ensure we encompass everything seamlessly." The conversation flowed into details, exchanging ideas on how to construct a schedule that allowed equal stewardship, family and ambition in tandem. Each suggestion they articulated moved them closer to an equilibrium they had neglected. But beneath the evening's tangible camaraderie simmered the reality of unaddressed tensions. It lingered in the air like a shadow, waiting for an opportune moment to emerge. The thought of their old patterns resurfacing, the potential for disagreements to eclipse the renewed connection, plagued her thoughts. As they finalized their plan, Sarah acknowledged the necessity of continued communication. Her own growth had ignited a longing for transparency, not just with her parents but also within herself. Trusting her instincts was becoming paramount. She realized she must also navigate her parents' expectations and perceptions. The conversation wore on, laden with significance, yet a nagging disquiet remained. How could she ensure they didn't revert to their old ways once the initial excitement subsided? As the discussion wrapped up and pleasantries filled the room, Sarah peered toward tomorrow, the first day of their budding collaboration. But a question echoed in her mind: would she be able to sustain this momentum, or would the looming specter of past regrets threaten to suffocate her efforts? The answer awaited her in the morning light, a promise cloaked in uncertainty that charged the air around her with urgency. As dawn broke the next day, washing the kitchen in soft yellow light, Sarah felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. Today was crucial. She sat at the breakfast table, preparing herself for a day that held every promise of change. Her parents were still groggy, sipping their coffees, their plans for the garden fresh in the air yet as fragile as the steam rising from their cups. "Let us make a list of what we'll need," she prompted, trying to inject energy into the sleepy atmosphere. "If we break things down into manageable tasks, it'll be less overwhelming." Her father, perpetually practical, sipped thoughtfully. "I get that this project is important for Jamie, but we need to approach it as we would any business venture. Efficiency will be key." His analytical demeanor was familiar, yet Sarah felt the weight of her own convictions pushing against the walls of their typical dynamic. "First, the supplies," she persisted. "We can list what each person will do. I can take on the research part and plan our timelines." Her mother looked up, a flicker of enthusiasm breaking through her reticence. "I can handle the planting. I already know Jamie would love to dig in the dirt." But beneath Sarah's enthusiasm lingered a shadow of doubt. Memories of similar initiatives gone awry wrapped around her like chains. If her parents reverted to their criticisms or lost interest halfway through, how would she carry this transformative spirit forward? As they moved into the afternoon, armed with lists and a shared vision, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The garden project became a symbol, the roots of their familial bond seemingly sprouting anew among spades and seedlings. In the local home improvement store, Sarah felt the familiar rush of strategy ignite within her. She relished orchestrating their purchases, delegating tasks, and assessing their chosen supplies with a discerning eye. The aisles became a classroom for communication. She encouraged Jamie to select seeds, igniting his imagination for what their garden might yield. The boy's face lit up with possibilities, and in those fleeting moments, she glimpsed a rekindled connection. Yet, her mind kept straying to the looming hurdle: would her parents acknowledge the emotional stakes involved? Beyond the seeds and tools, this was about vulnerability, a requirement for all involved. As they walked through the checkout, the weight of their choices there pressed heavily upon her, as if the items they purchased were more than tools for a garden, they were ingredients for reconnection. Later, back at home, the weight of her doubts invaded her thoughts again. In the quiet recess of her mind, fear circulating like storm clouds, she envisioned a scenario where they faltered, where Jamie grew disheartened, and her parents returned to their accustomed roles of exhaustion and ambition. Defeating such patterns required something deeper than a simple schedule or plan. Suddenly, needing clarity, she found herself outside, surveying the empty patch of earth they would soon fill with life. The bare soil, exposed and uninhibited, mirrored her emotional landscape. What if she pushed herself into unknown terrain, becoming a catalyst for responsibility not just for the project, but for her family's expectations? "Hey, can we sit down together before we start?" She called to her parents, who were unloading supplies. Drawing them together had become her new goal. Open communication needed to flap its wings. As they settled, Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing. "I want us all to be committed to this project, not just physically but emotionally." The words slipped out with more authority than she anticipated. "I think we need to be honest about where we want this to go and how we feel about taking care of Jamie together." With that revelation hanging in the air, Sarah held her breath, sensing the undertones of their family dynamic shifting. Would her parents engage with her request for deeper involvement and reflection, or would they retreat into familiar defenses? The answering silence electrified the space between them, laden with unanswered questions, as the potential for a transformative experience dangled on the edge of the moment. Would they seize it, or would fear chain them back into old habits? The answer loomed just out of reach, waiting to unfold. The stillness lingered as Sarah's heart raced against the silence. She searched her parents' faces for any hint of understanding or resistance, feeling as if the air grew thicker with each tick of the clock. Her father's brow furrowed, the gears of his analytical mind visible even without words, while her mother's gaze shifted, lost in her thoughts. Sarah's throat tightened, each tick amplifying her sense of urgency. "Why don't we start with how each of us feels about this project?" Sarah suggested, trying to break the ice once more. "What does gardening mean to you?" A mixture of optimism and anxiety surged within her. Her father set down his cup, shifting his focus entirely to her. "It's about providing Jamie with practical skills. Responsibilities toward our little ecosystem." His words were thoughtful but lacked the warmth she craved. He had always seen everything through a lens of efficiency. "If that's all it is, are we just checking a box?" She countered, her challenge sharper than she intended. "Gardening should be about nurturing something together, not just upkeep. It's about sharing moments that can bond us." "I just want to make this work," her mother interjected softly, her voice holding a hint of vulnerability. "But it feels stressful, thinking about doing it all right." Sarah sensed that, despite the tremor in her mother's voice, there was a seed of permission growing, an invitation to explore deeper feelings. "Let us not focus on doing it perfectly," Sarah urged, feeling emboldened. "Last year, we let things slip and that almost broke us apart. This time, let this garden be more than a to-do list. Let it be how we rebuild our connections." Silence filled the empty spaces again, and she could almost hear their minds whirring. Would they reflect on her words? Her parents had always shielded their own vulnerabilities beneath layers of practicality. Was it finally time to peel back those layers? "Maybe we could take turns working on it, whoever has the time and energy?" Her father suggested, though there was no conviction behind it, merely a mechanism for keeping harmony at the table. "I think it has to be more intentional," Sarah replied, her voice steadying as she wrestled with growing frustration. "If we operate from a place of obligation, we'll miss what it really is, an opportunity for us to connect beyond our roles." As those words slipped from her lips, she felt a ripple of realization course through her. A surge of insight dawned that ran deeper than just the garden. She wanted to redefine her family's emotional landscape. Perhaps she could lead the way, but the question arose, how could she address what was beneath their behaviors? The tension was palpable, carving lines on her parents' faces as they absorbed her challenge. For the first time, she felt the weight of their expectations shift, a tremor in the foundations that had governed their interactions for so long. "Okay, tell me what you need from us," her mother said finally, vulnerability stitched into the fabric of her voice. "What does emotional commitment look like?" In that moment, Sarah saw glimpses of their potential transformation, but it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She clenched her fists, knowing she had to hold her ground. "It means being honest, not just polite. It means stepping outside our comfort zones." As they discussed the boundaries of their emotional commitments, the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard. Sarah could almost taste the promise of growth on the horizon. But deeper questions gnawed at her. Was she willing to challenge her own patterns, even as she pushed her parents to do the same? With these thoughts seeping into her consciousness, the stark reality of her commitment dawned on her. Stepping beyond her family's historical roles meant facing not only their fears but her own hidden resistance. Would she dare to initiate conversations that could upheave the very foundation of their relationships? A new sense of clarity surged through her. Let us not wait until the garden is planted to start connecting. With that, she took a steady breath, ready to confront the complications that lay ahead, conflicts waiting to be unearthed, feelings aching to be voiced. Just then, Jamie darted into the scene, joyfully brandishing the seed packets. "Can we plant them now?" His excitement cut through the tension, grounding her focus back to the task at hand. But beneath the innocence of his question simmered an unasked question: would they all really be committed to nurturing this garden of growth together? Thus, as they moved past the threshold of potential understanding, Sarah felt the weight of transformation beckoning just out of reach. Would they embrace her vision or retreat into the shadows they had always known? The reckoning stood before them, pulsing with unspoken desires, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Sarah watched Jamie dance in playful anticipation, his tiny hands clutching the seed packets like treasures of a new adventure. Yet, beneath his enthusiasm lay the unspoken challenge that hung in the air, a tangible reminder that they were all teetering on the brink of change. "Let us get started," she said, her voice firm yet gentle, enough to cut through the clutter of her thoughts. Kneeling beside the earthy patch in the yard, she felt the cold soil against her fingers, a stark contrast to the warmth of the fading sun. It was a simple invitation, a call to action, yet it held a weight that felt monumental. As they gathered around her, Sarah's heart raced, not just from the fear of rejection, but from the realization that each seed they planted was a metaphor for the commitments they needed to sow within their family. With each handful of soil, she hoped to nourish the cracks formed by years of avoidance and misunderstanding. "Which seed are you most excited about, Jamie?" she asked, a smile breaking through the tension. "The tomatoes. They're the biggest," he exclaimed, pointing at the vibrant green packet adorned with a plump fruit illustration. "Tomatoes it is, then," Sarah decided, recognizing the significance of beginning with something simple. As her father measured the soil and her mother readied the packets, Sarah took a breath, feeling the collective energy shift toward a potential unity. Yet, her thoughts navigated deeper waters. Was this moment enough? With careful deliberation, she began sharing her vision for their time in the garden. "Maybe we could each choose a personal goal connected to the plants we grow. I want to learn about gardening techniques, like composting to enrich the soil." Her gaze flicked between her parents, seeking their engagement. Her father's brow knit tighter, though she perceived a faint glimmer of intrigue. "What about you, Mom?" Sarah prompted, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. "I think I'd like to work on growing something that requires patience. Maybe I can look into the flowers. They can remind us that beauty takes time to bloom." Her mother's voice trembled slightly, as if she were voicing a personal revelation that had long lain dormant. And then came a soft chuckle from Jamie. "Flowers are pretty, but can we still eat them?" There was a moment of laughter, a lightness seeping into the conversation, but underneath Sarah felt a growing recognition of the deeper work that lay ahead. Conversations that mattered, revelations that stung. This was where true connection thrived, not just in jokes or tasks, but in challenging discussions that laid vulnerabilities bare. Her eyes met her father's. "And what about you?" He paused, the muscles of his face tightening as if he pinched together a reservoir of personal fear. Maybe I defocus on the vegetables too. I haven't really thought about how sharing that responsibility could teach us all about teamwork. That performance of sudden vulnerability struck a chord in Sarah. Cueing her awareness to the emotional narratives intertwined with their identities, she sensed something shifting. As her father began to reveal a deeper tie to the garden to their family, she pondered what this could mean for their evolving dynamic. Yet, uncertainty gnawed at her. Would they ultimately confront the deeper issues simmering beneath their surface-level engagements? "Let us plant the tomatoes first," Sarah said, pushing down her doubts. They moved closer, hands digging into the soil, the act becoming a physical expression of what she hoped to cultivate: connection, understanding, and a collective struggle to embrace discomfort. As they settled into the rhythm of planting, laughter punctuated the stillness. A dance of shared labor and renewed energy infused the air. But the deeper task remained, an unfinished dialogue whispering urgently in Sarah's mind. How could she ensure this newfound commitment to honesty was sustained, not just another fleeting moment of connection? With that thought, energy surged through her, silent yet pungent. Was she ready to face the roots of her own hesitations, the fear that she might bear the burden of keeping this garden, and their familial relationships, flourishing? As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting a golden hue over the newly planted seeds, she realized they had only scratched the surface of their potential transformation. Would they be brave enough to unearth the topics they so desperately avoided? The path ahead shimmered with the promise of connection, yet loomed heavy with the uncertainty of what resonant conversations still awaited discovery. "Tomorrow, let us plan to talk again," she proposed, but even as she said it, a rush of anxiety flooded her thoughts. Would they engage deeply, or slip back into their old roles of silence and avoidance? The moment of truth approached, and she felt the weight of their unspoken desires looming, ready to be unleashed in the conversations to come. The following morning was riddled with an electric anticipation, the air thick with the promise of conversation. Sarah stood by the kitchen window, gazing out at the patch of freshly turned soil that now cradled the tiny seeds. It felt as though the garden had become an extension of her resolve, each planted seed a testament to the courage she hoped to cultivate within her family. As she sipped her coffee, the bitter taste grounded her, granting clarity. Today would not only be about horticulture, it had to be about real growth. She felt a sense of determination, realizing that nurturing their relationship required more than physical labors. This was about confronting the emotional weeds that threatened to choke their progress. The idea struck her abruptly. It wasn't just about her parents sharing their personal goals, but also about discussing the unexamined desires and regrets that lingered in their past. What had they sacrificed over the years? Were there aspirations they had buried deep, alongside their vivid memories? Would they trust her enough to unveil those layers today? "Morning." Jamie's voice chirped, breaking her train of thought as he bounded into the room, radiating joy. His enthusiasm reminded her of the youthful sink-and-swim occurrences in life that couldn't be curated, only experienced. "Ready for round 2 with the garden?" she asked, forcing her nerves to settle. "Definitely. Can we plant flowers next?" he replied, bouncing on his toes. Sarah imagined the blooms softening their interactions, infusing beauty into what had once been a fractured connection to family. When her parents convened around the dining table for breakfast, Sarah's heart pounded with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The casual clinks of cutlery filled the silences, an awkward dance that mirrored her concerns. She launched into her proposed agenda with purpose. "Can we start thinking honestly about why we're gardening together? It's more than just plants. I really want us to share our experiences as we cultivate this space." Her voice quivered, a hint of vulnerability slipping through. Her mother looked up, questions darting in her eyes. "You mean like sharing our goals, or?" "Yes, but also how we've felt about everything that's led us here, the choices we've made, the challenges we've faced together or apart," Sarah pressed, her heart racing. "I think we need to address why we struggle to communicate." Silence enveloped them momentarily. Her father shifted uncomfortably, breaking eye contact. A pang of fear struck Sarah. Would they retreat into their comfortable avoidance? But Jamie, perceptively innocent, prodded, "I want to know if there's stuff we've never talked about." Like what made you sad? Laughter bubbled openly, but Sarah felt its weight. Jamie's straightforwardness had peeled back another layer of softness, a willingness to explore the discomfort. She held her breath, hoping her parents would mirror his innocent bravery. What do you think we need to share? Her mother asked finally, her laboring tone signaling her readiness to engage. I think about, well, not just what I've wanted to do but who I've wanted to be as a daughter, Sarah confessed. I've wanted to be a better communicator but didn't know how to approach some of those conversations. Her father glanced down, visibly reflecting on his own history. The air hung thick with tension, yet there was also a shift, a silent acknowledgement that they were on the verge of something grittier than mere gardening. Sarah took another risk, transforming the atmosphere with personal reflection. What are your untold stories? What have you given up to make sure we, she gestured around, have what we have today? At this, her mother's gaze softened, and her voice trembled slightly. There are things, choices I made to keep us together that hurt in ways I never spoke about. Sarah felt her heart slow, awash in a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Would they finally break through the barriers that had maintained the silences for so long? Her parents were willing to traverse this tangled conversation, and she saw the flicker of resilience beneath their uncertainty. What if we fail? Her father murmured almost to himself. What if we don't? She countered, her resolve hardening. This is how we plant deeper roots in each other. Just as the words left her lips, she understood that cultivating change would involve risking the beauty of honesty. A wave of determination surged within her, but looming over the discussion like storm clouds were the darker elements of their past, obstacles she would have to confront head-on. Can we do that? Her mother asked, uncertainty lacing her tone. Together? The moment felt freighted with possibility, yet it was all laced with fear, too. A battle against generational patterns seemed inevitable, but the fire of growth had been sparked. As they readied themselves, Sarah caught a glimpse of her own inner struggles reflected in her parents' eyes. This path toward openness was fraught with the risk of revisiting old wounds. Were they truly prepared to unearth what had remained buried for so long? Let us start with the planted tomatoes today, Sarah declared steadfastly, hoping to solidify their commitment to transparency, both in gardening and in familial relationships. And as they moved back to the garden, anticipation crackled in the air. Could this tangible moment of planting truly give way to something more fertile? In the shadows of uncertainty loomed the reality of uncomfortable truths. They were all on the brink of a conversation that would either fortify their bonds or lay bare the fractures that threatened to unravel them. Would they nurture the stories that had lain dormant too long? Would they dig deep enough to unearth what lingered beneath the surface? As the sun reached its zenith, bathing the garden in warm light, Sarah felt a surge of determination. Each seed they planted symbolized a commitment not only to nurture the physical garden but to cultivate their familial relationships. With her parents beside her, she knew they were on the cusp of something transformative. Let us start with the tomatoes, she encouraged, kneeling beside the soil. As she supervised Jamie's enthusiastic digging, the boys' laughter echoed in her ears, filling her heart with both joy and resolve. The garden wasn't just about growing vegetables, it was an opportunity to build connections, shifting the narrative from isolation to togetherness. Her parents paused, exchanging knowing glances. This was their choice to define the framework of their family unit anew, a collective decision to transform their past misunderstandings into deeper understanding. With the sun warming their backs, Sarah initiated the dialogue she had envisioned for so long. We're starting fresh. Let us talk about why these vegetables mean more than just food, she prompted, her tone imbued with earnestness. This is the beginning of rebuilding our trust. Her mother looked at her with a soft determination, as if she were ready to peel back layers that had gone unexamined for years. I want to be honest, Sarah. I often felt overwhelmed, like I was putting too much emphasis on our community work. I forgot my primary role as a grandma and a mother. I've been trying to do it alone, and that's not fair to you or to Jamie. An exhale of relief drew from Sarah. This was the acknowledgement she needed. They were no longer standing on opposing sides. Her heart swelled. It's okay to struggle. I want us to support each other. Our paths can meet halfway. her father, wrestling with his own vulnerabilities, chimed in. I thought investing in community improvements, giving opportunities to youth, would somehow validate my success as a parent. I didn't realize I was losing sight of what our immediate family needed. Your commitment is admirable, Sarah affirmed, her voice steady with conviction, but we can prioritize our family values alongside community endeavors. Agreed, her mother whispered. We can make this a family affair. They plunged their hands into the rich soil, planting seeds together. Each action felt like a pledge, a promise to nurture bonds while growing alongside one another. The simple act became cathartic, transforming their silence into dialogue. Jamie, sensing the shift, jumped in with hobbyist enthusiasm. Can we do carrots next? They grow fast. The innocence of his suggestion cracked any residual tension, ushering in relaxation. Absolutely, Sarah replied, her eyes brightening. We can plant carrots together, then see how they grow strong, just like our family. With the garden morphing into a metaphor for growth, they began to envision collective goals, intertwining aspirations with family commitments. The planting session evolved, with ideas flowing freely. If we're committed, we can teach Jamie about responsibility. This garden can be our safe space to learn, communicate, and grow. Her mother nodded earnestly. We've taught each other more today than we have in years. Yesterday was an emotional breakthrough, yes, but I see potential in this. It's a bonding exercise. Amid the laughter and shared stories, Sarah felt her confidence solidify, backed by her parents' openness. This explosive transformation revealed the depths of her personal and familial evolution. With every seed, they had not only grounded their roots in shared labor but fortified their connections through vulnerability. After a hearty lunch together, Sarah and her family sat under the shade of their new garden. The moment manifested as a sacred juncture, punctuated by the understanding that openness and emotional responsibility could rewrite their narrative. Let us meet regularly to discuss not just our projects but how we feel about everything involving Jamie and each other, suggested Sarah, her voice clear and assertive. This isn't merely gardening. This is a commitment to ourselves. Her father and mother affirmed her idea enthusiastically. They understood that growth would require ongoing dialogue, a commitment everyone was now ready to embrace. As the sun commenced its descent, the horizon painted in hues of orange and pink, Sarah felt an exhilarating lift within her. This was no longer about anger or feelings of inadequacy, it was about solidarity and a commitment to deeper connections, both as individuals and as a family unit. They would navigate the imperfections together, binding their individual aspirations into a collaborative vision fulfilled through love and understanding. Each planted seed became a conduit for their shared stories, highlighting the importance of communication, growth, and togetherness. This was her achievement, the culmination of her journey, a solid foundation of trust built on authenticity and vulnerability. They had created a home in their garden, a sanctuary for cultivating cherished moments equipped with empathy and support. As darkness danced across the sky, illuminating the flickering stars, Sarah felt at peace. They had turned a page in their family narrative, becoming a united front committed to nurturing the bonds that would sustain them for years to come. The moment felt victorious, she had conquered the obstacles that once profoundly shaped her feelings of isolation. The path she had forged illuminated her individuality and the recognition of shared responsibilities that lay ahead. A swell of gratitude enveloped her as she reflected on the growth achieved not just through the seeds in the soil but in her own heart. And as she gathered Jamie and her parents close, Sarah knew that they were ready to face the next chapter together. Now, dear viewers, if you resonated with Sarah's journey towards personal growth and family reconnection, you need to subscribe now to this channel. Don't miss out on powerful stories of transformation that illuminate the path to fulfillment. Leave a like immediately to feed the algorithm and support our mission to share these impactful tales. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this emotional conclusion. What insights did you gain? And share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformative narrative. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Your engagement powers our ability to bring meaningful stories to life.